It's 12 o'clock, so I want to say welcome to everyone and to this episode of the Urban Lunch Talk TOD Revisited, Urban Planning and Design in Stationary Areas for Less Car-Dependent Cities. I'm Jennifer, and I work with communications for the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership, which is a program that sprung out of JPI Urban Europe, which is hosting today's webinar. Today we will hear perspectives on TOD from across the globe. And when we say TOD, we're talking about transit-oriented development, of course. But before introducing our topics and guests further, I would like to ask all the listeners where you're joining in from. So please write in the chat from where you're joining. Also remember to use the chat throughout this hour to write your questions or comments. We will devote some time towards the end of the webinar to answer to your questions. And please also note that this webinar will be recorded and we will publish it on the JPI Urban Europe YouTube channel. So if you miss anything or if you want to revisit it at a later time, it will be available. So back to today's theme, TOD. This planning concept has been around for some time to create walkable, vibrant, sustainable communities that have easy access to public transport. But why does TOD matter and how relevant is the concept compared to, for example, the 50-minute concept that we talk a lot about in the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership? Our guest panel are here today to share the state of art in research and practice regarding TOD, and also discuss best practice examples from both Europe and China. And we will take our starting point in findings from these projects that are funded in the AeroNet Co-Fund Urban Accessibility and Connectivity Call in the JPI Urban Europe program. And with us today, we have Todo Stoyanovsky, Gülin Bazaran, and Noriko Otsuka. Warm welcome to all of you. And to kick off our conversation, I would like to zoom in on the easier project. Gülin, could you please introduce yourself and give us a short introduction to the project?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Gülin Bazaran. I am a PhD student at the Technical University of Denmark and Copenhagen Metro, and representing Easier Project. And as the name of the project kind of hints, we're trying to make it easy for people to travel sustainably in cities. And by that, I mean walking, cycling, and public transport. And we're doing this with the help of colleagues from 4 countries, Denmark, Norway, Germany, and Sweden, actually. And we're looking at very different aspects of urban travel, like tariff systems. How can we make affordable public transport? How can we improve the experience of pedestrians? How can we create the right governance schemes so that the ideas we find can turn into practice? And also we're thinking of how we can optimize public transport systems. And I specifically, with my team at ETU, look at how TOD influences public transport use, walking, and cycling.
Thank you, Gülin. And now I would like to introduce you, Todo. Could you tell us a bit about your project?
Yes.
Hello,
everyone. Yes. As anyone can see, I'm a man-bun hipster guy who kind of runs the TOD project, a big advocate for TOD over the years. And really following the intellectual genealogy, meeting all the people around the world. And I'm an architect, so I very much look at the design aspect, but also we try to kind of, when we were talking with the Chinese, we try to make, to kind of revive TOD. That is why the idea of TOD 2. It's like Rambo 2. I come from the time when, you know, the Hollywood blockbusters were really taking over. So we kind of try to keep cool. We have a diverse team in the TOD project, from anthropologists to kind of architects and physical planners and geographers. So we kind of try to put the whole perspective from the history, how it developed through Calthorpe and Robert Cervero's D variables, Luca Bertolini's place node model, and all this kind of research, body of research on TOD, to kind of trying to bring it to the 21st century as kind of a new version, and expecting TOD3 too for the next generation, to kind of trying to inspire people mostly on this topic. So thank you.
Thanks, Todo. And now over to our final guest, Noriko. Could you share with us what the Walk Urban project has investigated?
Yeah, hello everyone. Yes, I'm the coordinator for Walk Urban project, and I'm a senior researcher at ILS Research in Dortmund in Germany, and also I'm associate professor for Osaka University in Japan. And Walk Urban actually aimed to better understand urban walkability in order to allocate more public space for pedestrians. Within our project, we looked at objective and perceived walkability. You know, objective meaning more walking from A to B, but perceived one is how people perceive during walking. And you asked people's perception on different types of walking, including how to walk to public transport stops. And we had 3 case studies from 3 European countries in Gothenburg, North in Sweden, and Dortmund, and also Genoa in Italy. And we actually tried to provide local solutions to support walking as a zero emission and sustainable and active transport mode in our urban area. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for these introductions. We will have the chance to talk more about your projects in a short bit, but first I would like to zoom out a little bit and ask you, why is it so important to get areas near stations right and attractive in urban areas? Maybe you can start, Fodor?
I start.
Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the whole idea about TOD in a cult of vision developed against a kind of being kind of aware of kind of the bad consequences of urban sprawl. You know, like increased carbon emission, reliance of gasoline. It's still finite resources of oil. How you organize the life. Fragmentation of the city, traveling to the so kind of concentrating development strategic points around public transport is very very important. But I want also to add that it's not, and it came with this idea of strings on a pearl. So every TOD is a pearl with a walking radius. But there are also other concepts in TOD or in public transport and urban design, as Noriko said, the perceptual public spaces, the whole journey, corridor thinking, and so on, that have not been so much focused. I've been personally working very much with some kind of amoebic shapes that are used in the US to understand the perceptual. So it's the pearl as a station area, but also the layers, how it links in kind of a Christopher Alexander of multiple patterns that kind of converge in a station as a node and as in a neighborhood as a pearl. So it kind of creates alternative to driving and alternative to kind of suburbanization that has been ongoing, because I mean, the cars give so much flexibility. You can live wherever you want practically. So with public transport, there are different rules. So we want to highlight these rules in urban design and kind of make a story, a nice story. I stop here and
yeah, maybe I can hop in on that, because it was great that you mentioned the whole journey, Todor. I think one of the key starting points of the easier project was the point where my supervisors noticed that if we look at how much time an individual spends on a typical public transport trip, it's actually half of the time that's outside the vehicle itself. It's on the way to the station, waiting, transferring, and then maybe walking to your destination as well. But if we think of where the investments mostly go to, the large budget investments mostly go to in public transport, it is trying to optimize the travel time, the time you spend inside the vehicle. But half of the experience of the individual is as actually related to what is going on outside, around, or inside a station. And I think that's one really key reason to really rethink how we can design urban areas and better stations as well.
Okay, thank you, Green. Actually, I agree with what you said, especially it's so important to think about pedestrians. Everybody who takes train or public transport, they are the pedestrians. So then if they think it is easy to take public transport, meaning from their home to destination, which always include walking. But unfortunately, infrastructure for walking and space for walking is not get the high priority at the moment. So therefore, it is very important to make station area development more attractive for pedestrians or active transport mode like cyclists. But often station area is such a complex and we need to accommodate different needs and different transport mode and there is a conflict. So we need to have a very clever way of accommodating all things and always need to make a priority for pedestrians from walkability point of view. Thank you.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned, Rico, the accommodating all needs, which is not an easy thing to do in urban planning. I think maybe you already answered this question, but if you try to like summarize, how would you explain that TOD is relevant in this context then of getting areas near stations right? What is the TOD's contribution to this? Or is this TOD in essence?
Yes, actually, TOD is very relevant because TOD is the concept for the compact and high density and mixed use around the railway stations. This is the beginning. But people tend to think of how to accommodate different uses and land use. Often take priority, but the important thing is how people move around, how to reach this kind of destinations. So then, as I said, it's arriving different kind of transport mode, and people often get lost in the station if it's too big. They really don't know how to get there, and wayfinding is so important. And also, we shouldn't forget quite a big number of people living. There's some residential area around the station. People can still reach to the main station on foot.
So I can tell that you're really advocating for the walkability aspect here, which is not strange. This is the
Can I advocate a little bit for the regional city, which is kind of the Kaltorp's idea. So on a kind of a grand scale, when you look at the city, we have a kind of something which is called travel budget. You travel around 1 hour every day. I mean, you're willing to travel. That's in the literature very. So when you travel 1 hour by walking, you reach certain amount of distance. I don't know, it's like 1 or 3 kilometers. When you drive, you can drive 100 kilometers. When you take a very high speed, like in Japan, you can travel 200 kilometers in an hour. So it's not just the experience on the station, but also the distances that you can reach over it. And importance of the TOD is that it's the only concept that competes with the private automobile, the car. So there is this regional component, and most cities work as regional. I'm around 35 kilometers from downtown Stockholm in a small town that it's linked with a bus. It's just 45 minutes to take the bus from here to downtown central. And it's 35 minutes to drive a car and you get stuck in traffic. So many people in my neighborhood choose to take 45 minutes by bus instead of driving 35 minutes. So this kind of regional perspective of TOD that it's seldom forgotten when we discuss about station area. It's incredibly important and how you understand and also how you create a community. So I know all the drivers here which chat about basic things. They say hi to your dad, because sometimes I go with my dad and my mom, and everyone knows that I'm single dad with a kid, and they say hi to your daughter. How's your daughter doing? So you create a community of drivers, of neighbors, and you all take the bus to the center. So this part also lacking. So we're trying to get this mobility community, mobile community aspect in the TOD too. and kind of capture not only passengers, but also drivers who can stress you while you take the public transport, and how drivers can contribute, how PTAs, public transport authorities, can contribute with better information and so on. So it's a kind of a real complex model to, in a way, to offer alternative to car-based suburbanization on a kind of a grand regional level that can reach 100 kilometers around a certain downtown, can include many small towns as main place. I stop here, but it's very important with the regional perspective.
Yeah, maybe I want to hop in a bit again and try. I think it's super important, obviously, to make an entire region accessible by planning your public transport network accordingly. But trying to link this again back to this whole journey perspective and the station areas, I think, of course, it's great that you can reach a super far distance within your region with this train network that has been designed, but still, maybe where you live is designed quite well, so you think of public transport as an alternative, but when you get to your destination, how do you actually feel within the surroundings of the area? I mean, the network might be designed so that you get to this far distance, but when you're there, are you, for example, feeling super unsafe because of terrible urban design? And how does that then influence your decisions to choose public transport? And this is actually something we've been looking at as part of my PhD, and we do see that actually, especially at activity ends where there's like workplaces, education, health services, whatever, where you're doing something and you don't live, designing following TOD principles, I mean, mostly the urban design related TOD principles, actually makes you more likely to choose public transport rather than driving. So I think it's like, yeah, both the regional, but also the local perspectives, and making sure that an entire region is actually implementing this rather than two super nice municipalities that care about this and the rest forgetting about it.
Yeah, before I have another question to ask, I just want to remind again, if you have questions, put them in the chat already now, and we'll try to bring them up towards the end. Yeah, we're talking both here about the regional perspective, the local perspectives. Both are very important to create this whole journey of sustainable travel. And yeah, your projects all relate in different ways to this. But for the TOD2 project, you had partners both from Europe and from China, and it would be very interesting to hear if you've seen any differences of how TOD is applied in China versus Europe.
Yes, I'm going to be a little bit anecdotal, tell you a little bit stories. So difference in China, same like Japan. China and Japan leave public transport. In Europe, we choose public transport. And the Americans have forgotten a little bit about public transport. Yeah, you can say that. I mean, it's besides New York. I'm going to be a little bit provocative. But there are lots of differences. When you leave public transport, entire city orients to self. So Noriko later maybe can say some things about Japan and compare with China. But in China, I mean, they kind of follow, at least mainland China. They follow the Tokyo model and the Hong Kong model, where public PTAs, public transport authorities, coordinate with land developers. Even they are landowners, so they create big shopping malls around stations to kind of harness the best of the location and make the public transport profitable. Because there are lots of discussion about costs of public transport, how much is cost and cut service. But in China and Japan, they kind of try to put commercial development, and the stations, you know, the exit of the station is the entrance to a shopping mall. We went to Frederiksberg in Copenhagen a few weeks ago. So you come out of the metro, there is a gigantic public space, an empty hall, and there is a tiny entrance to the shopping mall. So that was the best integrated station in Copenhagen to a shopping mall. So the biggest difference is really how commercialization and shopping malls are considered in China versus public spaces in Europe. So in Europe, typically public transport will come out to a public space that will be completely empty, and they might be shopping mall. But in China, I mean, the shopping mall will try to enter the station. There'll be like small kiosks and stuff like that, which makes it really smooth to travel. But there is no public spaces. So with our partners, we are kind of trying to find a good balance between European public transport, where we have an excess of it, where we want to do more commercial in Europe to bring the more shops and more activity around station, versus the Chinese mall, where you want to have a little bit the shopping mall a little bit off. So that is the first. There are many other in terms of mobility, but I will not talk about that. I just jump to Noriko. Maybe she wants to say something. This is, as a Japanese, and a way how she conceived public transport part of your life. In Europe, we choose car or public transport. That's not the case in Asia. And we can learn a lot from Asia. That's my idea.
Yes, thank you, Dodo. Actually, I grew up in Osaka, and my parents didn't have car. We didn't need a car, you know. I lived with public transport. But what a surprise when I arrived in Europe, people just stick to car because public transport is not as clean and also as punctual as in Japan. However, like TOD development in Tokyo, big stations, shopping center took the most of the place above the station, and often it is quite confusing to find the way to the platform. And I really think wayfinding to stations is very, very important, and smooth connection with the city center. So then people don't need to take a bus. Maybe people can walk, or even the public transport, easy to find. But I find the idea of public space in front of the station, railway station squares in Europe is quite fantastic. This is a place for everyone. Not for just shopping, but people can meet there and people have a seat and enjoy watching people. And nice trees or nice seating areas, flowers, everything is so nicely done. So as Todo said, there is both pros and cons, shopping related one, but no public space. But the Chinese or Japanese model really need a public space and a nice connection with the public transport.
Yeah, I think this ties back also to talking about the creating these attractive and safe environments. Maybe I can shift the question to you, Gulin, because the goal of the Easier project, as you mentioned before, is to make sustainable transport modes more attractive. And what role does urban design play in this regard?
Yeah, well, safety is actually quite an important aspect here, I would say. And by safety, I mean like fear of crime, maybe. So you're afraid that something will happen to you rather than thinking of traffic safety. And this is something where we already know from the literature, design has an important role. And the way we tried to analyze this is we actually scored a lot of stations around Copenhagen and the entire region on how good TOD stations they are. And by that, I mean, is there dense development? Is there architectural variation? How are the walking, cycling conditions, and so on? And actually, the TOD dimensions we work with also have criteria related to safety, like open facades, good lighting, providing human activity, and so on. And we see that implementing these actually makes people feel significantly safer at public transport, which then in turn influences, again, their mode choice, making public transport more attractive. So that's definitely a key thing. And then like another important thing maybe is related to design is like, it's not just benefiting one purpose. It's not just solving the problem of safety, but it's also, yeah, making public transport more attractive, making walking, as Noriko probably knows quite well, super attractive. And we see that principles that are aligned with TOD, again, like providing greenery, providing things to do, things to see, shops, open facades, and so on. These things all actually contribute to pedestrians' experience as well. We did a different study on how pedestrians feel walking or like experiencing different urban environments. And as I've mentioned, places with these characteristics make people actually feel more excited, more relaxed, and this in turn can influence how often or how long they walk. So it's really a win-win-win in so many cases, I would say.
I'm also picking up on some of the questions in the chat, and I think this really relates to what we're discussing right now. In your projects, have you seen any, or can you give examples of any innovative design strategies that are really then promoting active transport modes? Then when it comes to design strategies that can be implemented. And maybe this question could be turned to you, Noriko, because you're very focused on the walkability aspect, which is not the only active mode of transport, but what factors really promote walkability? Are there any strategies there that you've seen?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Jennifer. It's a very good question. I really want to answer. Actually, as I said, we looked at the perceived walkability, how people perceive when they walk. And we developed framework for analyzing perceived walkability with different level of walking needs, walking hierarchy, which I could say, like whether walking is feasible or convenient, comfortable or pleasant or stimulative. The feasible meaning is a basic thing, if they can walk or not, like pavement surface or barrier-free, or its safety, those kind of things. And convenient is, for example, if you look at the railway station, in front of the railway station, there is often 3 traffic lights. You have to wait for ages. It's not convenient at all. So pedestrians should have a priority and easily walk through to the end station entrance. Okay, and comfortable stuff is, for example, if the pavement is clean and with greens, if they walk, people see greenery, and those kind of things always helps. And the stimulative stuff is more exciting. What the green said, we can watch people as there are shopping areas, all different things going on public space. So we looked at perceived walkabilities from different perspectives. And our first hold survey results suggested people with higher perceived walkability walk more in duration, distance, and also frequency. So that's why it is very important to create attractive urban public space, especially station area, tailored to pedestrians. Thank you.
Maybe I could kind of add an innovative design strategy maybe we should not necessarily do. And that's, I don't know if it's going to be controversial, but that's park and ride that I'm talking about. Like, I hear this so often by practitioners, by researchers. Park and ride is going to solve everything. We're magically going to make people drive to a station, leave their car, and take the train forward. And yeah, in some areas where it's highly suburban, really not dense population, maybe that makes a lot of sense. But in the mode choice analyses we make here in Denmark, we see that, again, at the activity ends where there's a lot of things going on, this is actually working both against public transport use, because your workplace has a parking lot right next to the station, you just drive there and leave your car, but it's also not so great for pedestrians and cyclists, because it suddenly adds a huge distance where you have to walk through cars. You probably feel unsafe because there's nothing going on around you. It's just an empty lot. So I think we need to be a bit more critical about this specific facility and where it works and where we should put it to the side.
Should I comment on pedestrian, or should we continue?
Yeah, whichever you would like. If you have a comment, you're welcome to share it.
Well, I mean, it's again, it's established set of indicators or kind of factors in the built environment that people been kind of in urban design have been researching for years. The sense of enclosure, safety, kind of need direct what's there. Other people, you always want to see other people. Destination like shopping and stuff like that you want to visit. Reason to go there. So it's kind of a quite established body of literature on walking and why people walk. So when we discuss public transport, Dan Chapman, when I visited Berkeley, he is a big critic. He said, "Well, we don't even need T on TOD because it's when you have all this walkable environment, people maybe don't even need to take the public transport, they just walk around and enjoy. Then we come back to the 15-minute city. When we kind of design this walkable, do you design for a 15-minute city or for someone to make a transfer and go to the other parts? But the argument is really that there is a regional city. Everyone wants to go to IKEA, everyone wants to go to somewhere in some corner of the, we have karaoke, which is kind of 60 kilometers away, and we like to go to karaoke. So we take the bus, and the bus comes in 3 a.m. So they're a special destination, and you map them around the city. So you have a nice, you want to go through the nice walkable, but you also want to get destination. And it's it's a kind of big body of literature on walkability and what makes walkability work. Like Michael Southworth, The Walkable City, very nice definition about Jane Jacobs, the size of the block, mix of buildings in a city block at the frontage, how to work with frontage. New urbanists, Emily Talent has been working a lot, Vikas Mehta also with this kind of frontage approach. On the other side, you have city of eye level and life between buildings. Konrad Kickert, lots of cool papers from Konrad, and they have consultancies, Jan Gel, Stipo in Netherlands, who kind of work with this life between buildings. So it's kind of a big, just it's a matter of implementing them. And here comes the municipalities that we were discussed before. I stop here. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You also mentioned here the 50-minute city concept, and this is something that we also discussed a little bit, how they compare to each other, how do they relate. I also see somebody here in the chat saying that they're working on scoring TOD and looking at accessibility within the 50-minute city. So how do you think, how relevant is TOD compared to the 50-minute city, and how do they relate to each other? And yeah, anyone are free to jump in here.
Well, I can start this time because we kind of I'm also part of another project where we do transit oriented. It's DUT 2023, where we do urban agriculture, TOD, and 15-minute cities. How to work with the station areas with an extended range that goes and creates 15-minute city kind of self-sufficient communities. So there are lots of, as I said, there's a little bit of overlap, but there is also lots of contrast. So 15-minute city neglects the idea of a 60-minute commute, but tries to put the accessibility first, where perception can be second. So there it's very good. The 15-minute city is a way to kind of reinvent topics like TOD, like the whole journeys. But on other hand, it kind of makes unclear definition of, and it's very good for walkability too, because it defines. But as I said, there are similarities in walkability, and kind of the TOD can become a 15-minute city as a pearl, but then TOD, as I said, has this regional perspective that the 15-minute city tends to kind of neglect, and the willingness of people to travel more, because as I said, it's kind of very important. But on the other hand, it brings this isochron urbanism that's been throughout the accessibility paradigm. And there are lots of people who have worked with accessibility. There is a big conference. Whistler, there is a big conference at Cluster Nectar, and TU Munich, they're like the top advocates for accessibility. Please check their works, particularly with mobility hubs. And TOD, if it includes a mobility hub, it can expand to 15 minutes. If you have robotaxis or shared bikes, then it can be much expand. So it's not about 10-minute walk or 5-minute walk but again, it's a provocative concept, 15 minutes, opposite of TOD, which is kind of really based on how we travel and how we plan public transport. 10-minute walk, 40 minutes by public transport, 10-minute walk. It's like 1 hour roughly travel, 45 minutes. So a line will never be longer than 45 minutes to 1 hour, which is kind of will be the extreme commuting. But so it's kind of a confusing in a positive way, the 15-minute city, that makes us revive our old concepts. I stop.
Can I take over? Yeah. Yes, I really liked it, Todd. You said this regional perspective is very important. I believe everybody don't have the luxury of living in 15-minute city. And often people has to live like surrounding area of the city, peri-urban areas. They really need to commute taking public transport. But what the TOD is those kind of people's travel is if there's a very good hub and very good station, they can reach very quickly to the hub station and then change the tram or like metro very quickly and reach the destination quickly and also more enjoyable way if they can spend some time in the station, in the shopping area or a restaurant, for example. So in a way, TOD could be the gateway to the 15-minute city to serve those people who live just around the big cities and require commuting for like 30 minutes or more than 1 hour. So that is my perspective.
I like that phrase, the gateway to the 15-minute city. And I mean, we also have the 30-minute territory, right, that complements the 15-minute city concept. So there is definitely a need of this regional perspective. Another thing, in your research about TOD, I would like to hear a little bit about what is the most promising results that you have seen in your project, but also the challenges and maybe conflict zones that you're seeing. And maybe you can have a moment to think about this. I've also saw a question here in the chat that regards the maximum density around stations, and how do you deal with conflicting matters such as density versus green space, for example? Is that a conflict that you, for example, have seen in your projects? No, not really. Okay. Yeah. So do you think it's more important to prioritize the high density? Is that more important, would you say, in TOD, or is that on the account of green spaces?
I mean, I would definitely say that high density is quite key, at least to make public transport attractive. In this mode choice model I've been mentioning, we've looked quite in detail on the importance of distance to the stations. And there we see that really the shorter the distance, the more likely you are to choose public transport. And the effect of distance actually is like quite significant after around 400 meters. So I would definitely say trying to prioritize density as much as possible, and not just housing, obviously, but also workplaces, commercial activities, and so on, is important. But I would also argue against like doing this at the cost of providing greenery. But I'm not the architect here, unfortunately, so I really don't know how like to exactly make this like trade-off and design better. But it should definitely not be at the cost of greenery, because we also see like from walking, right? Noriko also mentioned that it's super important for walking, super important for cycling. So yeah, we need to find the sweet spots for sure.
Yes, and I would like to add, actually density of course matters. High density is also always quite better, to make more compact place. However, it's all depending on how dense is it. If high density means high-rise building, for example, in Tokyo, people never walk just next to the high-rise, like 40 floors building. It's not present at all. So we really need to have some kind of human scale place, and also nice public space with greens or seating areas. That matters. So then people walk more enjoyable way. And if they perceive walking is more enjoyable, they walk more to the public transport station at the beginning. So that's why it's quite important to think about the human scale. All these urban designers talking about for years, but we revisit this kind of things as well when we're thinking about the TOD too, don't we, Todo?
Exactly. My apologies. There was a mailman here. So to repeat the question, because exactly Trink, and then there was, does density matters in TOD? Was that the question? So yes. So
Yeah,
I can explain when you kind of consider on a single scale, like a pearl, like a station area, and you focus particularly on a station area, you say, well, the density matters on this station. But if you understand TOD as a string of pearls, where you have a high density, low density, high density, low density, high, you can create a corridor of pearls that kind of brings diversity along a line. So it's not just about focusing on one station. It's never density that matters, it's the design that matters. That is our argument. And how you create commercial spaces in a way that you orient towards the station. And I have written a paper about that, and it's the balance between commercial and public spaces along that. You don't want to have too much public spaces because they might not be used. You don't want to have too much commercial. But you can have a station on one story, and the next station can be with skyscrapers. So importance of the line thinking in TOD is incredible also. So sometimes people forget and say, well, this is a really bad station, but next to it, it has a really good station. But it will kind of create a diversity. In Sweden, we like villa, living in villa. So there are lots of neighborhoods where with villas linked to very dense centers, and that creates some kind of satellite model of small moons around station where you still can live in a villa and still have public transport and use public transport. So you try to create a network with pearls who are different densities, but it's most important in how you orient with the human scale. And it's a super cool idea not to make people exactly at the station, but to make them walk a little bit further, because we are kind of lazy lately. We don't want to walk so much, so you want a little bit to walk and get in shape. And so you kind of try to get these nice destinations and variety of TODs along a single line and create a corridor. Have more like a mobility, a mobile community on your mind, that you know that, oh, I have one line and that line has a cool karaoke, it has a cool shopping mall, but I still live in a villa in a corner of it. Also, that is the big advocacy that we want to bring with TOD. The density doesn't matter. It's kind of the whole journey perspective, the corridor perspective, the mobile community perspective, the idea of a human perception and scale, the balance between commercial and public spaces. My daughter just got a gift from the post mailman, so my apologies if she talks to me right now. She's all excited. Sorry, it's not very professional here. Single dad here. My apologies. And I take public transport only. I don't have a car. Sorry, I'm like this. How to say a special outlier in the story. Sorry, and I talk too much.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, the density in itself is not maybe the most important thing, but how it all ties together in the string of pearls. I think on our discussion today, do you think that there's any aspect of TOD that needs to be reconsidered?
I mean, maybe the role of cars, because in most of the earlier TOD literature I read, it's like, yeah, we want walking, cycling, public transport, but it's not like we're making cars completely irrelevant. But I'm not sure if we should, rethink that a bit, because if we're just developing a new area and the housing there still has a lot of parking, although it's hidden away, maybe not so isolated, huge parking lots, but it's still there. And if there are like villas in this with the new development with 2 parking spots per villa, but there's public transport nearby and there are bicycle paths, is walking, cycling, public transport still the attractive mode? Or are we still letting people have a car? I mean, people should have a car if they really need to, but yeah, I'm wondering if we should rethink that a bit. But it's just one idea, of course.
Yeah, any other comments from Todor or Noriko on this? If not, I will bring in a question here again from the chat, or actually try to answer maybe a few, because the question here is to hear what type of factors that affect mode choices. And we have one concerning weather, the price of public transport versus individual travel costs. In your projects, how have you seen like that these factors affect mode choice? Because obviously it's not only the urban design or the planning of the infrastructure. So how does other aspects affect sustainable travel choices?
Maybe I could start by commenting on this, because yeah, most of my PhD has to do with mode choice analyses, and obviously travel time and travel costs are things we always control for. But I think especially in terms of cost, I guess maybe a more important thing is whether you already have a car. And at that point, I'm not sure how important cost is, but we still see, at least in the analyses in Denmark, at like long duration, long distance trips, public transport is attractive. It's not like it's completely unattractive, especially if it's nicely planned on a regional level, as is somewhat the case here in Copenhagen. But weather effects, I'm not so sure. I'm from Turkey, and in Istanbul, if it's raining a lot, you do not take your private car because congestion will be terrible. So you have to take public transport. I mean, forget getting a taxi, you have to take the metro. So I guess that's a bit also context dependent, but that's not something I have looked much into in this project, at least.
Yes, I could say about the cost of using public transport. Yes. If people has a car, so they think it's quite easy to drive and to the station, but often they forget the time of looking for parking and the parking cost. That's often they forget. It's quite costly in some cities. And another aspect from our Walk Urban project we found out is actually this is more infrastructure matter, but barrier-free matters a lot for the older people. They walk quite nicely, but they can't get on the bus if there is a barrier-free issues or go to the metro station. So that they lose the opportunity to reach the main station or city centers. So the access, making access for the barrier-free is quite an important factor to include all target groups.
Well, can I have an anecdotal answer to this? So we had a professor who was expert in transport modeling, and he lived 100 kilometers from Stockholm. And he modeled because he was a green traveler and he was a professor and he was not supposed to show that he was driving the car. So he made like bike, cycle, bike, take train, then bike again. But when he did his model, modeling with his wife, they figure out that cost effective. So the most cost effective alternative in suburbs is the car. So if you always put the cost argument, car always wins. So that is why I myself been advocating. I've been advocating for different kind of trip generation model. I've been publishing. They were really not popular among transport modelers, and who really like to put the cost perspective first. But whenever you put the cost perspective, it always the car wins, because the car is flexible. You have very small, even if you put parking on, now it goes through apps and stuff like that. So car always win when you put the cost perspective. When does car not win? In TODs. When you put the human perspective, when you put human scale, when you put the possibility to meet people, to create a mobile community. In a car, you don't get that. So this kind of hipster thinking that I'm kind of advocating, it's a kind of a going beyond the costs and trying to kind of create the whole experience, a seamless travel. You can work on public transport. So time cost, it's kind of a thing that it's a kind of it has lots of, as a methodology, it has lots of problems where we need to really look at the humanistic aspect. That is why we want to have the mobilities paradigm, John Ury, Mimi Schiller, mobility justice, aspects like that to be integrated in TOD2. that will kind of compare not just the driving as a pleasure. It's cool to drive. I have a new Tesla. I'm all electric and stuff, but also to kind of consider the social aspects of being on a bus, talking with someone, the comfort. Typical bus are really not comfortable. We want to talk with Scania, like, oh, redesign the buses, make them cool. They have some new concept buses. So make the whole experience really cool. Make it like Coca-Cola. There was one cool guy, Robert, in Karlstad bus, and he was a guerrilla marketer. He was a marketing expert. And he said, why don't we make public transport like Coca-Cola? Sell lifestyle. Don't sell time, don't sell costs, sell lifestyles. And you know, Coca-Cola is bad for your health, but you still love their marketing. So we need this kind of marketing in TOD. We need to learn from other things. That is why TOD 2 should be better. It should be like really good Rambo 2, like the one that has all the parts. So it's not like the things should be like go and return. It's like Lord of the Rings 2. Yeah, you want to see the third one after that. So turn into the trilogy. Sorry, I talk too much. I try.
No, I really like that perspective, and also a focus on shift to the benefits and the values that you get, and not only looking at the costs. And we have a question also just coming in the chat about what costs that are accounted for in this when you speak, Todo. Is it only the personal financial cost or overall costs? And then we're not only talking about maybe financial costs, but also for externalities in environment, health, climate. So what's the cost we're talking about?
I can explain very simply. So when people think about costs in public transport and why should they cut the cost in public transport, it really means wages of drivers. And you know, cutting wages of drivers means that the drivers are less happy on the public transport. Less happy drivers bring less happy decisions. And you know, drivers, you know, are very proud people. They're working class. You know, and there is a tradition of people who kind of want to do driving, and you know, they have a local community. They talk about bus. So you know, it's not really lost, this cost of public transport. It's kind of like creating the community. So most of the time when people want to cut costs in public transport, cut service, it is kind of really cutting part of the community, and this is a multi-layered. So TOD is not just the station area, but it's the community that supports it, and so it's very important to have it. And I think when you do just a cost-benefit economic analysis of it, you kind of try to miss these aspects of the and it's when I say whole journey, it's not like I want to go from there to there. I meet the bus driver, I meet my neighbor. They might be sad, you know. We kind of have very much serendipity moment. I met lots of bankers on my, because I lived in the Yapi area. So these bankers come with me and we talk about public transport, about digitalization and so on. So you know, meeting people randomly on public transport, quite serendipity. And yes. And there was a cool about not being professional. Sorry. I mean, the idea is to show public transport in TOD that, you know, it should not be non-professional. It should really consider all these aspects of people who are part of that. And they've been for 2 centuries, you know. They're like bus drivers, conductors who've been part, and there are lots of train spotters, bus enthusiasts, public transport enthusiasts. They should be kind of, we kind of need to kind of support this community, which is not a cost. I would say it's a benefit, but some people see it as a cost. So it's kind of it's a monetary cost, but it's social benefit. So it's kind of, it requires a more complex understanding of public transport as a service. And I stop.
Yeah, we have a lot of interesting questions coming in the chat, and unfortunately, we will not have time to answer to all of them. But I would just like to focus on one last thing here, and it regards bridging the gap between research and policy, because you're doing really good research, but then how is it implemented by the cities and the city authorities? So maybe, Noriko, you can reflect on the role that cities or municipalities have played in your research and work.
Yes, actually in Walk Urban project, we had 3 academic institutions and 1 municipality of Genoa. And we talked about the perceived walkability and how to improve walkability. And they actually had a very nice walkability project called Pedibus for the children go to school on foot, like waiting for the bus stop and the people come together, children, and walk together. So we did it together for walk along exercise interviews with children. We walked from school to the park and children told us about this perceived walkability from different perspective. So it boosted their idea of walking the cool things and very nice things. We should walk, not going to school by car. So we nicely combined this, our research method of walk along with their real pedibus project within the municipality. In a way, we created a nice win-win situation between research communities and also municipality. Because municipality often tell me, Noriko, we don't need a report, go to the drawer. We really want to do something based on your research result. So in Walk Urban, we did quite nicely to create this kind of situation.
Sounds good. Maybe we shall be inspired and look more into your research project on how to collaborate with the municipalities. Before we end now,
can I also have a quick talk? Because we're going to organize two TOD conferences, and the first is aimed to municipality. So the first one will be in Copenhagen. It will be organized by Niras, the Danish consultant, and we'll look at so we're going to try to advocate through the network. But if anyone wants to come to municipality, public transport authority, we're going to have a conference in Copenhagen. In this time 2015, and then in the summer 2016 we're going to have a TOD conference, TOD2 conference in Nanjing for everyone, academics. So we're going to have everything, but for municipality especially, how you work with handbooks to practice and so on. So it's coming soon. So
now you got
and yes, as I said, I got a question there. TOD, or it's my name, yeah. It coincides randomly with TOD. I did not choose it. It was just assigned to me in 2009 by accident, by choosing me as a TOD PhD student.
But Todo, this sounds very relevant then. Where can then people find information about this if they're interested to join?
I think we will go through the sources of Ikusamt Bignat. We're going to announce on LinkedIn. We're going to announce also on DUT and GPI Urban Europe. So I'm going to, so we have very cool, Robert Cervero might come, Emily Tallen, Benjamin Butner, me from TU Munich. We will try to bring the mobilities experts, and we're gonna try to make it really cool and really short, sweet, concise conference. And same for the Corinne Muley, Graham, also Graham from Monash, who is a professor in public transport. We're gonna make a superstars of TOD, and Otto we will come to.
We'll send out the information, but now before we end, our point of a do and a don't. This is something that we always do in an urban lunch talk. So I would like you to share just one key do and a don't when it comes to planning stationary areas to make them attractive and promote sustainable travel. Gulin, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, I'll start with a don't, and that is don't forget that the public transport user or the individual experiences the entire trip from door to door. And because of that, do collaborate with your colleagues at the municipality, public transport company, real estate developers. I think we really need to get them on board to create some real estate solutions that can promote sustainable travel. Yeah, do collaborate, because if we don't talk to each other, we will not make this work.
All right, Noriko, maybe you can go next.
Okay, so what we shouldn't do, don't put the priority car access to the station over other transport mode, but we'll put more easy way finding for pedestrians and barrier-free access to the station entrance.
And Todor.
Yes, don't forget public transport. Many who do TOD forget public transport, and read about TOD and do it your own way. So every city is unique. Every city is has its, as I said, its mobile community. Try to make them happy with Coca-Cola kind of thinking.
Thank you all for those great tips, and thank you all for your participation today. Special thanks to our guest speakers. It's been very exciting to discuss this topic with you. In the next couple of days, you will find a recording of this webinar on the JPI Urban Europe YouTube channel. We will also send it out to you and the content questions from the chat if you're interested of receiving that as well. Also sign up to the JPI Urban Europe or also DUT newsletter, where you will get invitations for upcoming Urban Lunch Talks and also super exciting events like the one Todor mentioned, for example. And for the latest news, you can, of course, also follow us on LinkedIn. But thank you again for being with us today, and hopefully see you soon. We have 2 more upcoming Urban Lunch Talks with the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership already in September. So make sure to check those out as well. Thank you.
Yeah, bye everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.